You know, most of us think we know Gulliver's Travels. You probably remember it from childhood, a fun adventure story about a guy who gets shipwrecked in a land of tiny people. But the thing is, the story we all know, it's just a sliver of the real thing. Because this was never meant to be a fairy tale. It's written as the actual travel journal of a man named Lemuel Gulliver, and it's a terrifying account of his journey into a very, very dark place. So let's crack this thing open and see what's really inside. Okay, so right out of the gate, the book does something really clever. It tries to convince you that every word is true. The publisher, who says he's Gulliver's cousin, starts things off by telling us that our narrator is the most honest guy you'll ever meet. I mean, his neighbors literally had a saying. If you wanted to say something was absolutely true, you'd say it was as true as if Mr. Gulliver had spoken it. So the stage is set, right? We're being told, believe this, no matter how wild it gets. But then, just when you're ready to believe, a letter from Gulliver himself throws a wrench in the works. He's actually complaining to his publisher pretty furiously that the story has been changed, that they've put words in his mouth and made him say the thing that was not. So wait a minute. We have a man famous for telling the truth, telling us a completely unbelievable story, who then claims the version we're reading isn't even the whole truth. It's this brilliant, confusing setup that just completely blurs the line between what's real and what's not. And that's exactly what we're going to explore, the supposed journals of Lemuel Gulliver. We're going to follow the path he says he took, a path that doesn't just lead to strange new lands, but leads to the complete shattering of his mind as he comes face to face with what he believes is the ugly truth about all of us. So who is this Lemuel Gulliver, anyway? Well, he's not some wild-eyed explorer looking for thrills. He's a professional, a surgeon, educated at Cambridge, with a wife and kids. He's a pretty ordinary, respectable guy who only decides to become a ship's doctor because his business back home went under. And it's so important to remember that, to remember this very normal starting point, because it makes where he ends up so much more shocking. All right, so Gulliver's first two voyages, they aren't really about adventure. They're about perspective. They're these fascinating thought experiments about what happens when you're forced to look at your own kind through a completely different lens. His first shipwreck, the one we all know, lands him in Lilliput. It's a kingdom of people who are only 6 inches tall, and when he wakes up on their shore, he's a giant, a man mountain. From way up there, he gets a literal bird's-eye view of their society, and it all seems a little too familiar. And this is really where his cynicism starts to kick in. I mean, can you blame him? He finds out that their country is torn apart by these vicious political rivalries, all based on whether you should crack your egg on the big end or the little end. Seriously. And if you want a high-ranking job in the government, you don't prove your wisdom, you prove how well you can dance on a tightrope. From his great height, all the pomp and pride of human politics suddenly looks incredibly petty. Absurd, even. Like a game played by children. Well, on his very next trip, the tables are turned. Completely. He washes up in Brobdingnag, a land of 60-foot-tall giants. And now he's the tiny one. He's a curiosity, a little pet kept in a dollhouse, terrified of being stepped on like a bug. And these two experiences give him two totally different but equally horrible views of humanity. When he's a giant in Lilliput, it's like he's looking through a telescope. He sees our society and all our conflicts and ambitions as laughably small. But in Brobdingnag, it's like he's looking through a microscope. He sees every single flaw on the giant's skin magnified. The pores, the blemishes, it's all grotesque. So from a distance, we're ridiculous. And up close, we're just disgusting. After seeing all of this, Gulliver comes to a really bleak conclusion. He realizes that humans everywhere seem to have this knack for taking their own silly fights and blowing them up into these grand moral dramas. It's a flaw, he thinks, that you can only really see once you've been on the outside looking in. So he's already torn down humanity's social pride and our physical bodies. What's left to attack? Well, how about our greatest strength, our intelligence? And that's exactly what his third voyage is all about, an exploration of what happens when human intellect goes completely off the rails. He finds himself at the Grand Academy of Lugado. You can picture it as this world-class research university just filled with the most brilliant minds of the era. But the projects they're working on, they are completely, utterly useless and detached from reality. Just listen to some of the things these geniuses are up to. One has spent 8 years trying to extract sunbeams from cucumbers. Another is trying to build houses from the roof down. There's even a machine that lets anyone write a book on any topic just by turning a crank. The whole place is a monument to idiotic ideas. And it proves to Gulliver that even our so-called genius is just another path to ruin. And if that wasn't enough, his faith in humanity takes another massive hit when he visits an island of sorcerers. The governor there can summon the spirits of the dead, and he lets Gulliver talk to anyone he wants from history. So naturally, Gulliver asks to meet the greats, the heroes, the people he's always looked up to. So what does he learn from the ghosts of the past? He learns that everything he's ever read in a history book is a lie. He finds out history is just a pile of conspiracies and murders. Those great victories he read about, well, as this quote says, they were usually just accidents caused by cowardice and incompetence. His heroes were frauds. The whole grand story of human achievement, he realizes, is a fiction. So let's just take stock here. By this point, Gulliver thinks human society is a joke, the human body is disgusting, and human intellect is a sham. There is absolutely nothing left for him to respect. And his fourth and final voyage is the one that delivers the final, fatal blow to his sanity. He ends up in a land inhabited by two very different species. The first he meets are the Yahoos, and they are just the worst. They are filthy, violent, greedy animals. And then comes the soul-crushing moment of horror when he realizes they look exactly like him. They are, without a doubt, humans. But the beings in charge couldn't be more different. They are the Houyhnhnms, a race of intelligent, talking horses. Their society is a utopia built entirely on pure reason and truth. They are so good, so logical, that they literally don't have a word for lying. For them, it's just an impossible concept. And being stuck between these two worlds, the disgusting, bestial human and the perfect, rational horse, is what finally makes Gulliver's mind snap. He looks at the Yahoos, and he looks at the Houyhnhnms, and he makes his choice. He decides he's one of them. He starts to talk like a horse, walk like a horse. He completely rejects his own species and dedicates himself to becoming a creature of pure reason. So in his mind, Gulliver has done it. He's found enlightenment. He's seen the truth. But this truth comes at a terrible cost. Because the Houyhnhnms, as much as they admire him, eventually have to ask him to leave. Why? Because no matter how much he acts like them, he still looks like a Yahoo. His presence just doesn't belong. And so he's exiled, forced back into the human world he now hates. He gets rescued by a kind ship captain, and after a long journey, he finally makes it back home to England. Back to his wife, back to his kids. For anyone else, this is the happy ending. The weary traveler is finally home safe. But for Gulliver, this is when the real horror begins. And this is the devastating payoff. Because when he sees his own family, he doesn't feel love or relief. He feels revulsion. As he says here, the sight of them filled him with nothing but hatred and contempt. He can't stand to look at them, because all he sees are more Yahoos. His travels didn't open his mind. They slammed it shut and locked the door forever. And this is how the book leaves him, a completely broken man. He can't stand the company or even the smell of other humans. He faints if his wife even touches him. He ends up buying 2 horses and spending all day, every day in the stable with them because they're the only creatures he can tolerate. The respectable English surgeon we met at the beginning is gone, replaced by a madman who prefers the company of horses to his own children. And that leaves us with the book's final, terrifying question, the one you see on the screen now. Was Gulliver insane? Or was he the only one who was truly sane? A man who saw the unvarnished, ugly truth about our species and was simply and logically broken by the sight of it all. It's a question that takes what we thought was a fun kid's adventure and turns it into one of the most disturbing and brilliant takedowns of humanity ever written.